Hey, all you viewers out there, Sean McElroy here with our Autoline exclusives. Joining me today is Pat DiRamo, President and CEO of a supplier company called Martinrea. Now, I'm sure you all have seen the thumbnail and you clicked on this video, so you know what you're here about, but because we're here to talk about graphene, of course. But I'm willing to bet many of our viewers out there probably know more about graphene than they actually do about Martinrea. So, Pat, could you give us a little bit of a thumbnail about the company?
Martinrea.
Yeah.
Martinrea is a tier one automotive supplier. We make automotive parts out of steel, weldments, fluids products, aluminum casting. Are about 4.5 billion Canadian owned, and service the globe. We're heavy in North America. Probably 75% of our business is in North America, but we have locations in Europe, China, and Brazil as well.
Well, I apologize if I pronounced the name wrong there. I myself am just learning about the company a little bit too. So it's pronounced Martinrea, huh?
Martinrea. Yeah, a lot of people pronounce it Martin Ray, but it's Martinrea.
Gotcha. Gotcha. So now let's get into what we're here for. We're all here about talking about graphene. And of course, you guys at Martinrea have incorporated into coated brake lines, which I find very interesting. For those of you that don't know about graphene, it's a form of carbon, very, very super thin, one atom thick, has a bit of a honeycomb pattern to it. But the thing about graphene is that it's not only is it very strong, but it is very thermally and electrically conductive. And it was discovered in about 2004. And I think we're only just starting to very much scratch the surfaces of all the applications that we could put this towards. So it's very cool that you're doing coated brake lines with this. Can you tell us a little bit about that project?
Yeah, there's a wide array, as you said, for applications of graphene. I think, not too long from now, you're going to hear graphene and all kinds of things. But in our case, how do we apply it to our products? We own 20 odd percent of a graphene company, which is part of our interest in this. And looking at how we could apply it to our products, brake lines was one of the first places we looked. Brake lines are a double-walled tube with copper plate and are coated. They take a lot of abuse. Abrasion resistance is very important. And our thought was, could we put graphene, in the coating or in the product to protect it better? And as it turned out, we found working with NanoXplore that a mix of graphene in the nylon coating improved the abrasion resistance substantially. And it also allowed us to remove other products that typically protect key areas on a brake line, whether it be padding, whether it be polypropylene, which adds weight and expense. So it's quite a breakthrough. It's not something that our customers necessarily were asking us to go find, but it's something that we developed, and there's a lot of interest in it.
Yeah, I mean, you mentioned the abrasion qualities of it. If I'm not mistaken, in my experience, typically you'll see a coated brake line, say somewhere between like the engine compartment and the back of the vehicle, where stones and water and all sorts of other things can get kicked up. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct. They front to back, and of course, up by the master cylinder all the way down into the guts of the machine. So absolutely.
And I mean, it makes complete sense to use graphene in an application like this, because I read something like graphene is 100 times stronger than the strongest steel of the same thickness. So it makes a lot of sense that it would fit an application like a brake line.
Yeah, it's definitely kind of a wonder material when it comes to its its physical qualities. When you look at an abrasion test that we do in terms of cycle, we do a cycle test where we try to disrupt the surface, and something in the area of 5,000 cycles would be typical for this type of product, and we're able to get closer to 500,000 cycles. So it's literally 1,000 times better from an abrasion point of view than the typical product.
And I remember reading that there were some weight savings involved with this. Is that the actual product itself, or is that talking about the other things that you can kind of take that off the vehicle down the line?
It's really a couple things. One is for this same brake tube, a lot of products are developed with nylon and polypropylene and nylon will give it that abrasion resistance. And polypropylene adds to the thickness of the material, so it weighs about 25% more relative to, if you compare apples to apples. And then you have to have different connecting and so forth because it's thicker, so it adds cost to your tooling as well. That, or if you use what we call sumi pad or padding in certain key areas of the vehicle based on where the brake line is next to the road and so forth, you can remove all of that. So that weight or the polypropylene, either one, it will lighten the product itself. And it's about 25% in a comparison study that we did.
And one thing I'm kind of really interested in when you're developing something like this, I know there's a lot of different factors that you have to take in for types of interference with the vehicle. Like, do you have to worry about this being electrically conductive or bringing in a radio signal that you might not want or anything along those lines?
No, we haven't seen anything in terms of interference or potential interference. You're right; it is thermally conductive, which is actually an advantage because it'll distribute the heat to whatever it's touching, on a wider range. But electrically, we haven't had any kind of issues or any kind of testing that is necessary to determine that. It does actually give you a little bit more flexibility in routing because one of the problems in brake tubes is you have to route them through the car and avoid areas where they rub and so forth, both in the vehicle and for stones and so forth. And this gives you a little bit more flexibility because the abrasion resistance is so much higher that I think you can be a little more. I don't want to use the word casual when it comes to car design, but I think you can be more flexible relative to how you route the brake lines, given the fact that they've got so much more resistance.
Oh, that's very interesting. I know. I mean, I have a friend who's an engineer in wiring, and he's always talking about just the difficulty of trying to route the wires through the
Yep.
system. I mean, I can only imagine that brake line, the person that's designing the brake lines and how it's going to fit into a vehicle probably faces the same sort of issues.
Yeah, and they're a little less forgiving than wiring because
Right.
of their structure.
For sure. And you talk about this, how the graphene is being combined with the nylon. How is that done? Are you guys getting the graphene in like a powder form? Is it coming to you in pellets, or
We
how do you
actually,
get it?
yeah, we actually extrude it, a mix. So we take the graphene pellets, compound it, working with our supplier, and then that compound is melted and extruded onto the brake line as we construct it. So imagine the brake line production line starts out with strips of metal, which is double rolled. It goes through a rolling process, then it goes through a bath for you know, for lack of a better term, like an e-coat. And then it goes into the extruding process where we extrude the graphene and nylon onto the final product. And then it gets rolled up and shipped to one of our plants where we'll cut it and form it into the product that we sell to the customer.
And so you're talking about manufacturing process here. Is this any different than, say, a normal coated brake line? Do you have to
You
do
know,
anything different with it?
not significantly. I mean, we do these types of things when you put a, nylon polypropylene coating on, you're using an extrusion type of operation. So really, from a capital point of view, it wasn't a significant investment change for us. The majority of what we had, we were able to use with some modification.
And then, how about on the automaker side? Do they anything that they would have to do differently for?
No, no, actually, again, from an automaker point of view, it should be simpler because there's less padding, less sumi tape, less weight, less size. So fundamentally, it should be easier to install, if you will, and maybe even packaging will improve where you can get more product onto a rack because the product's smaller, so to speak, at least from a wall point of view.
Okay, quick sidebar here. What's sumi tape? I've never heard that term
Yeah, it's
before.
just it's a product name. So if you were to
Okay.
go into a vehicle and you looked at a brake line, there are areas where abrasion is risk is higher, and there'll be a padding or a coating. It could be polypropylene, it could be a tape, it could be a wire mesh, and we kind of use sumi tape as a general term for all those things. But it's essentially additional padding on the brake line to protect it in key areas of abrasion.
I know exactly what you're talking about now. I had just never heard that term before. Very
Yeah,
interesting.
it's something I picked up since I've been here too.
Gotcha. But getting back to the whole manufacturing aspect of it, for an automaker to have to not do anything more, or maybe even making it a little bit easier on them, I don't know that people in the general public realize how big that is to not have to either change tooling of something, change machinery, or heaven forbid, having to shut a plant down to bring in the new
Yeah,
machinery.
yeah,
That's
this
huge for an automaker.
yeah, I think this will be a pretty popular product because um, it's not too intrusive, and in fact, it may, like I said, it may make it easier. It certainly isn't going to make it any harder. Um, and it gives them a better product. At the end of the day, it's a better product, it's a lighter product, and a simpler product.
Does that create any sort of difficulty for you? You say this was a product that people weren't necessarily coming after you for. It was something that you guys developed because you see all the benefits in it. Does that creating any sort of difficulty for you as into getting the word out there about it?
Initially, it's a little slow always with things like this, but graphene's got a lot of attention of a lot of automakers because of all the attributes you discussed at the beginning, and so that certainly helped pique people's interest. And then some key customers stepped in right away, and we started testing and working with them for actually a few years now. And interest level is very high. I think this will be a very popular product, and you're not looking at a big cost difference from a customer point of view. You're getting more for similar amounts of money. Um, and again, it's lighter and simpler.
So, can you give us any sort of an idea of when an automaker might adopt a product like this on a
Yeah,
vehicle?
we expect it to be in the first production vehicle this summer, at least based on current timing. Now, something disrupts that, obviously it could change, but right now, based on current timing, I'd say midsummer it'll be on a product.
And I have to ask, but I think I know the answer. Can you tell us who that is or what vehicle it might be on?
You can ask, but I can't answer.
I
But
figured
I
as
can
much, but
tell
I
you
had to.
there are competitors right behind them. We're working with multiple automakers right now, but there are a few that have stepped in fast, and like I said, one this summer should be in production based on the current schedule.
So, coating of a metal line is obviously not just limited to brake lines. There's other metal lines on a vehicle, in
Yep.
particular, one that jumps out are fuel lines.
Yeah,
Are
I
there
mean,
any
fuel.
other
We already
applications
are. We're
for it?
already working with fuel lines. We're running the same, well, similar. Obviously, tests are different because they're fuel lines, but the same process we used with the brake line. Fuel lines are coming. TOC lines, air conditioning lines, just about any type of a metal line that has any type of potential uh, abrasion or rubbing condition. This would apply to similarly, we believe.
And then how about any sort of other applications for graphene that you might be exploring?
Well, we do make some polymer parts in one of our groups, and we are working on UV protection, stabilization of different plastic parts we use as cladding on the outside of vehicles, around windows, things like that, that we're trialing currently. Certainly, paints and polymers have the easiest to adopt graphene. Um, it's the best place to, do your trials and probably execute, due to the fact that graphene can mix with different plastics and paints so well.
Yeah, it's like we said at the top, it's a super interesting compound, and we're just scratching the surface of
Yep.
its applications. So, I expect to see many, many more coming down the pipeline.
It was interesting when we were approached years ago about getting involved in graphene. We had no application ideas at the time. It was just such a fascinating material, and we thought it had so much potential. We wanted to be involved in it, and so we invested. And then over time, found that we had ways that we could apply it in our current products.
Yeah, very cool. So you say summer of 2021 is the schedule for when we could probably see this on a car. Can
Yep.
we expect a news release from you guys uh, touting your system in that
Oh,
vehicle?
certainly, certainly.
Good.
Once it's a done deal. I mean, it's in process now. It's just a matter if anything gets in the way. But currently, it looks good.
Well, I really appreciate your time bringing us up to speed on this. Like we said, so many applications coming, and I just find it really interesting. So, thank you for your time today.
No problem. You take care. Appreciate it.
Yeah, you do as well. Thank you.
Right. Bye bye.